Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's see. Welcome to tonight's Planning Commission meeting. As a courtesy, members of the public may participate remotely in this meeting. Please refer to the meeting agenda for information about how to provide public comments, either in person here in the room or via Zoom conference, teleconferencing. Any person may address the commission on any issue listed on this agenda. Persons wishing to speak on an item listed on the agenda will be heard when called by staff. You're welcome to speak for up to 3 minutes. Public comments from remote participants on Zoom will be audio only. This means members of the public wishing to address the commission will not be allowed to speak live. However, This means members of the public wishing to address the commission will be allowed to speak live. However, their videos will not be shown and screen sharing will not be an option. Finally, since the city cannot guarantee that the public's access to teleconferencing technology will be uninterrupted, and the option for the public to participate remotely is only a courtesy, if technical difficulties arise for participants using teleconferencing, such as Zoom option, the meeting will continue unless otherwise required by the Brown Act. We appreciate your patience. All right. I would like to have a roll call, and I will start out. Commissioner Sturm is excused absence, I believe. Commissioner Radnich.
Present.
Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner DeGiorgio.
Present.
Vice Chair Deming.
Present.
And Chair Labange present. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any public comments that are not on tonight's agenda?
For those in the room or attending on Zoom, as each item comes up, you'll be offered the opportunity to comment on that item. This item is for items which are not on the agenda this evening, but are within the purview of the Planning Commission. If you would like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda, go ahead and raise your hand now. Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a presentation. Mike, Capital Improvements Program and update. Thank you for coming out.
Well, it's good to be back. Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Commissioners. Mike Moran with the City of Lafayette, Director of Planning and Engineering, and each year I come before you to ultimately find that our proposed capital improvement program is compliant with the general plan or in conformance with the general plan. So that's why I'm here this evening. Each year, also prior to this meeting, we typically meet with the Capital Projects Assessment Committee to kind of vet the program and the budgets and kind of go over that and take in their input. And we did meet with the CPAC just this last week. I'm about 2 weeks behind schedule this year for a very good reason. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But basically, this is an opportunity. I come in and I say, this is what we did, this is what we're doing, and this is what we plan to do. So we did have two major paving projects last year. The main paving project was on Pleasant Hill Road and Acalanes Road. So the east and the west ends of town, if you will. We did some major paving. We did some surface sealing on St. Mary's Road, like from Roar to the town limit of Moraga. Also Pleasant Hill Road, I'll call it Old Pleasant Hill Road or Pleasant Hill Road South from Mount Diablo Boulevard to Olympic as you go into Rossmore and the new roundabout there. And then also Mount Diablo Boulevard on the west end of town. So we covered some major arterial streets this last year and got a lot of coverage. Because of that, our pavement condition index, which I reported last year was a 73, is now back up to a 76. Very happy about that. 73 is considered good, obviously 76 better. And that's about the level we would like to maintain our streets at in perpetuity, really. In the high 70s would be the best that we could hope for. We also had a storm drain project last year that was the result of a failed storm storm drain during a storm through an easement, and that was really about a 2-year process to get that prepared and completed because we do work with Fish and Wildlife, the Water Board, and the Army Corps of Engineers to get the permits for the outfall that went into a creek, that went into Las Trampas Creek off of Moraga Boulevard. So those are the main projects that we completed, our larger capital projects. All the while, we are still working on the School Street, Topper Lane, St. Mary's project. That's been scheduled to be about a 2.5-year project. We anticipate that we will be starting construction on that in 2026. And could I maybe put that table up? There it is. So these projects at the top here that say construction projects, we're all hoping to get to them in 2026, but several of them we've been working on since last year, and you may recognize or be familiar with some of them. One of them I was just mentioning, the pathway design and construction school Topper St. Mary's. We have been working on the planning process and the design for that. We anticipate the design to be completed completed later this fall and construction next summer, 2026. Along with 2 flashing beacon crossing projects. One was mentioned last year as Mount Diablo Boulevard at Hampton, and a new one at the roundabout, actually. It'd be the last leg of the roundabout that does not have a PED crossing flashing beacon system in place yet. So that'd be the third leg of that. So we've been working on those types of projects. Down at the bottom, we have a design for bridge maintenance design and a West Reach Creeks project. This is a section of Lafayette Creek that's across from the Vets building. It happens to be one section that the city actually owns because most of the creeks are private property in Lafayette, but we have jurisdiction over this one. So those carryover projects are down there because I do not anticipate construction on those until 2027. So what I've left off the discussion so far is the 2026 pavement repair project, which is at the top of this table. It's a robust program for next year, $3.5 million, larger than our typical capital project for paving maintenance. And that really is because we were able to pass Measure H. And I'm very thankful for that. Part of the salesmanship of that measure was, hey, we'll be able to maintain our streets and keep them in good condition if we get a little more money. It actually won't be a big bump, but we'll at least be able to maintain them and not have them slowly drop off. Due to the escalation in cost, we were losing ground. And as I mentioned, we were lower last year. Knowing we were getting this funding, we went a little more in this last year. And then for the next 7 years, we are anticipating getting about $1 million in today's revenue extra for our pavement maintenance program. So because of that, staff reworked our pavement maintenance program for the next 4 years, but including this year, a new 5-year program. And we showed a 5-year program last year as well. But because we have more funding, I'm happy to report we were able to run a better, more robust program. Less surface seals and more repaving, which will last longer, will be smoother in the first place. Residents prefer them, all that kind of thing. It's just a better program now that we have the money. So happy to be putting forward a better program for the next several years. And I think we're going to see our streets our pavement condition index in the high 70s, which is considered very good. And I'm overall pleased with that. It will also allow us to take some of our residential streets. I've noted we focused a lot on arterials this last year that are dropping off and degrading, and we'll be able to take those and make them a new street again and give them a longer life, maybe a 25-year to 30-year life that we can restart on those. So I think it's going to be a good program going forward. There's nothing real weird here. You've seen most of these projects and then the pavement maintenance going forward. I will add, and it's not on this table, but we actually think we're going to get permission to advertise the BART project that's come up several years in a row. It's a pedestrian bike station project on the south side of the BART station connecting through town center. It's got an art feature as part of it. It's been in the works for several years. COVID changed the funding from it from partly Measure J to, I think it's like Measure XX, but it's the BART measure basically because it is a joint BART project. And it's been quite a process getting through this. We've been at this project for several years. I think we're very close. We actually had to redo some of the structural calculations for the art features because when we did it before, we were under a older uniform building code, so we had to update that. So that's what we're waiting for now. We believe we'll have permission to advertise from BART. The one concern I have there, it's about a $3 million project in total, is that we actually may not have enough money to build it. We'll find out when we open bids because it's been on the books for so long. So those are sort of the projects I have. Happy to answer any questions and looking for just a motion for conformance with the general plan.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Carl.
Remind me or tell us, are the costs for the next few years in constant dollars or the index for inflation?
So those are in constant, well, both, okay? Basically, if you look at my funding up there, the gas tax, the SB1, the solid waste impact fees, they sort of have inflation built into them to some extent. The gas taxes, if we buy less gas, we have more electric cars, it actually may go down. That's my funding. So it basically take the total funding and cost the project to it. But I'm using pretty good estimates of what we believe we're going to get. The solid waste impact fees, those are set, and every once in a while they do like a new nexus study, which will reset it and get me kind of an inflation factor.
I was actually talking more about the 26, 27, 28, the project cost.
I am too.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is it's, as the cost of those projects go up, they're in today's dollars,
Yes.
but they have an inflator as part of our pavement management program.
Okay.
So that inflator may be 3%. If we have a 7% increase in construction costs, we may lose ground unless I also get a 7% bump in those fees, and then we'll just have more money to do the same project. So the intent is it's sort of a built-in inflator, but it's not guaranteed.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Hold on, please. Hold on. Vice Chair?
First, thank you so much. I live off Pleasant Hill. Absolutely fantastic work. It's very nice. I did have one question that I brought up. And I don't even know if you guys were responsible for the section of it, but it's Pleasant Hill, kind of past where it does the Taylor split. The question really comes down to, when you're doing a road resurfacing, how much coordination, if any, is there with EV mud, power, because I saw the new pavement go in, it was amazing, and about 2 weeks later, there was a giant trench dug in it to install, I think, some new water main. And it just kind of was like, why didn't they do that before and then get a nice new paved road, because then they had to reseal and redo and all that. I'm just wondering during the process, how much is that part of it?
So we try and coordinate a lot. Sometimes that water main wasn't on anybody's radar, and it was actually the construction that caused the vibration and something broke loose. I don't know the specifics of that one. The northbound Pleasant Hill Road, actually from Reilly's Valley on, so what everybody would think is still Lafayette is actually Contra Costa County's jurisdiction, and we did coordinate a joint project with them to get that section done. We coordinate quite a bit. The St. Mary's Road project that we're going to repave this summer, we were going to repave 2 years ago. And East Bay Mud came in and said, we really need to change our main. So the last a year and a half, they've been working on that main change on St. Mary's Road so that we could obviously get that done before we repave. And that was one where we were last minute, but we were able to kind of change our plans and do something. We share our list with Central Sand, PG&E, and East Bay Mud. So every underground utility. And actually, a few of us are starting to join this service where you can map what your proposing capital streets are. And I don't think PG&E has signed on yet, but I believe Central Sand and East Bay Mud is going to make coordination even a little better. So I'm hoping, literally, we'll have this color coordinated, and maybe we'll be green and they'll be blue and they'll be red. And if we get two colors on any one street, we need to talk. Yeah.
And is any, this might almost certainly falls out of your purview, but is there any part of the projects, given wildfire risks, things like that, with like bearing power lines alongside all this construction, especially if it has to like go under roads, things like that? Again, two birds, one stone?
Yeah, I mean, that's more PG&E and in their realm. And we have worked with County Fire from our public works side to do more clearing. Last summer, we had a good few-week span where we included Pleasant Hill Road, Happy Valley Road, and St. Mary's Road to just do more pruning and widening of the, and getting rid of some of the dead fuel along the side of the road. So hoping to coordinate more projects like that. Obviously, an extremely important topic right now with emergency evacuation and just reducing fuel for fire.
And my last one, again, probably outside your purview, but only because it's relevant coming up to a future agenda topic. I understand there's been work, discussion, something about a pedestrian pathway sort of on the south exit from BART going sort of immediately east along 24. Is that?
So with any luck, you'll see that on a table in future years. Patrick Golier, our transportation program manager, did receive, or has been notified, we will receive a grant to do some design work on that. It's for $300,000. The problem with this pathway, and is it basically would follow the East Bay Mud Aqueduct, is to really do it right, it will require bridges over Happy Valley Road, and then Oak Hill Road, and then First Street. And so the bridges are extremely expensive. We're looking at, well, what grant could we go? But we really need, $15 million to do this whole project, which is, 5 years worth of paving projects in Lafayette. But we may be able to get a grant for a smaller section and do, one segment. But really to do anything that's going to open that pathway up and serve the most users, you probably need at least one bridge. So that's the expensive part of that. However, the design's going to start. We hope to have a design, in 2 years on the shelf, so to speak. And if funding does come up, we'd be ready to start that construction.
I have two questions before I do, though. Greg, do we have public comment during this segment? Or can we?
Yes.
Okay.
So following the commission's questions,
With public comment?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, sir, in a bit, not yet, in just a bit, I'll ask for public comment, and then you can go. So real quick on two of them. I don't know this very well, so the federal earmarks, I'm just asking out of curiosity, any concern with anything being pulled back from us? Or
So we are moving ahead as if nothing will be pulled back from us. I don't think we'll lose out on much. I mean, as far as wasted effort, if it is, all lights are green right now.
Okay.
Is there concern? Of course. I mean, there's a lot of talk and concern.
Right.
And, what was already allocated and approved, is that going to be impacted by future policies? We just don't know.
Okay.
I can tell you that, for example, on the Smart Signals project, Contra Costa Transportation Authority is pushing their consultant to get the design done this calendar year so that early, like January of 26, they can get that out to bid. And I think there is some concern that if we're losing anything, let's at least get in early and get whatever money we can get. So
Okay.
we're not wasting any time.
Gotcha.
But that's all we can say. We don't know.
And then my second one is on the roundabout, which I use a lot, and I absolutely love it. I do feel a lot of people need a little assistance on how to do it. So I'm wondering if that's something the city has considered, or, like maybe, and I don't know what the best way, but, some public notice or in the roundup or something like, hey, here's a YouTube link to how to run through a roundabout, because a lot of people do not know how to do it.
We could do that again. We did do that when we first put it in, and literally there is a YouTube, and here's how you use it, and yield if you're already in the circle. And
Right. Okay.
yeah, I can mention that to Suzanne for like a roundup.
I almost
Yeah.
wanted to get out one day and just do a little public service myself and just kind of say, you can go, this is a yield, but I figured that wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I mean, it is common for people to stop,
Yeah.
but also not yield the right. I mean, it
Right.
could go either way, but I think it's more common for people to stop when they could keep moving.
Right, right. Once you understand it, it flows really well.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, great, thank you. So, oh, we have one more?
And I think that's a great idea, but if also you could include bicyclists in the roundabout, because there's a big difference if they towards the inside and own the road, or if they fly through on the outside, because they're really hard to see. And I know, more than one person's almost taken out a bicyclist there.
Yeah, no. And basically, the encouragement is if you're a cyclist going through the circle, the traffic circle, you do want to be in the middle of the circle. You want to be in front of the driver. We did add the sharrows when we restriped it this last year and added a couple more. And they're centered. They're not off to the right. I think the mistake is if people think there's sort of enough room for a bike lane here. There is not. You either need to be driving on the bypass, like if you're a younger user, or you need to be in the middle of the circle. So that's a fair point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to open up to public comment now, and I know you probably didn't do a card, so sir, why don't you come up, just introduce, say who you are to the mic, and then address up here, and just go ahead and ask your question. Just for the record, you're going to be asking us, and we'll try to see if we can facilitate the question.
You want to press here? Okay. My name is James Chorale. I live close to community center. I have a question for Mike, because even though I talk to Mike very often regarding the streets. Is there any plan to signalize the North Lucille Road and St. Mary's Road? Is it in the radar? Or along the street, you have Robert Drive and St. Mary's Road? Because these are stop signs, so you should have better traffic control device like signalization of this intersection.
And I want to put this out. So the point of the public comment now, and I don't want to stifle what you're asking, is to discuss what the agendized item is tonight. What you're bringing up is really off the agenda.
Okay.
So if that's something you can easily answer, please do, but otherwise.
Yeah, okay.
No, hold on. I'll let Mike if you want.
Yeah, there is no plan to signalize those intersections. I know we did add the flashing stop at Roar to help with compliance there. And I don't think it would quite be warranted, and the last signals we put in cost over $1 million. The last signal we put in cost over $1 million, and we have to maintain it forever. So as long as the stops are working and it's safe, we wouldn't consider it.
All right, thank you.
All right, great. Any other public comments related to the topic at hand tonight? Okay, so I'm going to close public comment, bring it back up. Any other questions for planning? Otherwise, if anyone wants to propose a motion.
I'll move that the capital improvement program, that we find it in conformance with Lafayette's general plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next is consent calendar. So if I can have a motion, or if anyone wishes to remove or amend or anything, otherwise if I can have a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. New public hearing. I will turn this over to, I guess, staff. All of staff over there to take this one away, please.
Thank you, Chair. Jean Iceberg is the project planner for this item. You've seen it before in a different iteration. She will be presenting by Zoom.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. I'm Jean Iceberg. I'm a contract planner for the city. Bear with me, I'm just gonna switch my screen. Okay, tonight we're back for an action item. This is a hearing on 1001 Oak Hill Road, a tract map, design review, grading permit, and tree permit. The project includes 4 parcels and demolition of all 3 commercial buildings on the site, removal of approximately 23 protected trees, and the merger of those parcels into one, those 4 parcels into one. The project includes construction of 90 condominium units, including 11 below market rate units, 2,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, in a 7-story building. There are 183 vehicle parking spaces proposed and 52 bike spaces, both in the garage and, excuse me, in the ground floor and on the sidewalk. The Planning Commission last saw the project in January when we held a joint study session with the Design Review Commission. The Planning Commission generally agreed that the proposed building was large, it's tall, but well-designed, and that the massing and step backs helped reduce that apparent mass of the building, including the addition of horizontal details. The Commission and both commissions encouraged the applicant to refine the south elevation to ensure it's well-designed when viewed from Mount Diablo Boulevard, and encourage the applicant to meet the proportional criteria of the below market rate requirements, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So I wanted to highlight a few changes since the commission reviewed the project in January. So first, now the applicant has revised the inclusionary housing proposal so that they are meeting the below market rate units proportional to the units overall for the entire project. So that means the same number of bedroom counts, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, et cetera. They've also refined the retaining walls and fences at the rear of the property on the west side, reducing the height of the retaining walls. And so what you see on that shared property line at the back of the site on the western side is a low retaining wall, about 6 inches with a 6-foot fence on top. A key change that I'll show is a reconfigured driveway access from the south side of the property, and then some revisions to that south elevation, particularly the trees. No changes to the facade on the south elevation, but to the landscaping. So this is the key driveway access change. So the previous proposal, which is shown on the top, was attempting to work with the adjacent property owner to extend the driveway and access easement so that there could be 2 separate driveway entries into the property. Again, if you have gone to the site, you'll notice there's a big grade change running east to west. Instead, the revised proposal keeps with the existing access easement on this property, neighboring property to the south. And so both garages, the first floor and the second floor, are now accessed with that single existing access easement. And then the key change to the south elevation is additional plantings in those landscape planters. And so here's a view of the south elevation, and you can see the 2 garage entries, first floor garage, second floor garage, which is at an angle, and then some additional trees in those planter wells. There's some revisions to the state density bonus law waivers and concessions. This project is proposed under state density bonus law, which allows the applicant to receive a density bonus in exchange for placing the affordable housing units on site. They've asked for several waivers to objective development standards and design standards, as well as a concession from the public art requirement to eliminate that fee. The project complies with the downtown objective design standards, the new zoning district for the site, which is Special Retail Business District 60, and meets the housing element sites inventory realistic capacity assumption. And then lastly, the project is identified as categorically exempt from CEQA. The Design Review Commission met last month and recommended approval of the project. They made a few suggestions, including to provide the city with details about how the parking stackers will operate and be maintained within the garage. They did ask the applicant to consider some refinements to the south elevation. Those have not been proposed here. And then lastly, they requested that the applicant provide details about landscaping, species, number of trees, et cetera, which is included as part of the conditions of approval. A few other notable conditions of approval. We have an extension of the entitlement from 1 to 2 years, a requirement that the applicant provide color brushouts and material samples on site prior to construction, a requirement to underground the utility pole at the northeast corner of the site on Oak Hill Road and the overhead line across the road, And then lastly, a contribution towards the design and construction of the aqueduct pathway adjacent to the site to the north. We've received two public comments in the last 2 business days. One, a support letter from a housing advocacy organization, and second, concerns from the adjacent neighbor regarding impacts on their views on driveway traffic and garage access to the neighboring property. Concerns about noise during construction, and concerns about massing, soil stability, and infrastructure. Because this is a state density bonus law project, the City Council will take final action on the project. The staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission hold the public hearing, review the project, and adopt Resolution 2025-02, recommending approval to the City Council. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone up here have any clarifying questions for Gene? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Gene. Can you speak to or address the public comment we received today? Well, one of the public comments we received today regarding notification. I just want to make sure that the proper notification's gone out and that maybe there was an address mishap or something, because as pointed out by the commenter, this project's been noticed a number of times. So that I just want to, it's just a little concerning to me that at the last minute, there's a comment that they were not notified, especially since they're the adjacent property.
Okay. Yes, so I did confirm that the property owner, the mailing list has been used on each of the notices. I do want to clarify that the notice has gone out just 3 times. So there was a study session in January, and that was noticed. The Design Review Commission meeting in March, and that was noticed. Then there were some continued items while the applicant was making some changes to the project. So subsequent meetings where the item was continued, those were not re-noticed. That was based on the previous notice. So as far as I see in terms of the mailing list, those notices went out to the address from the commenter.
Okay, thank you. And then one, maybe we do this later, but if at all possible, could you briefly, I know this is covered in the staff report and it was covered in prior staff reports, but could you briefly describe what the bonus density law is, and just for any member of the public or anybody listening to this understands what a concession and waiver is and how a developer gets certain concessions and waivers?
Sure. So state density bonus law allows applicants to, in exchange for providing affordable housing on site or senior housing on the site, it allows them to receive bonus density in exchange for providing that affordable housing. And that also enables the developer to take advantage of certain waivers and concessions. The waivers are unlimited, and they allow modifications to development standards or other regulations that would otherwise physically preclude construction of the units. And so that could mean setback requirements or height requirements, again, physically precluding. The concessions are limited. So in this case, based on the amount of affordable housing that the developer is providing on site, they're eligible for 1 concession. And the concessions need to be actual cost reductions for the project. So they're requesting a concession for public art, and the public art is a fee that is an actual cost to the project, or it's if public art's provided on site, it's an actual cost to the project. And so that's the 1 concession that they're requesting.
Thank you for that. And so the last part of my question, you stated that waivers were unlimited. And an example of a waiver is the height of the building and thus the massing of the building?
Yes, so they've requested waivers for height, for the upper story step back. Those are things that affect the massing of the building. Yes, and really at this point, the way that state law is crafted, the city does not have. It's really the onus is on the city to prove that these waivers wouldn't physically preclude. And in this case, it's very clear that these development standards would physically preclude the development of these residential units.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just to tag onto that, because I do think it's important, if you think about the one limiter that is part of the application and state density bonus, it's the number of units, which does change with the addition of affordable units. So even if an applicant requests a waiver, they can't ask for a waiver for more units than they're allowed. Is that correct? And when I say allowed, I mean after we do the calculation to include the state density bonus allowances.
So in this case, based on the zoning, the density allowed is 60 units an acre. Based on the size of the site, that allows 73 units based on that 60 units an acre. Because of the 5 very low income units that the developer's proposing on the site, that's 6% very low, they qualify for 17 additional density bonus units. In this case, they're taking advantage of all of those. And so they are allowed to propose 90 units on the site as they are doing. If they provided more affordable housing on site, they could qualify for more units.
But they couldn't ask for a waiver or concession for more units. They would have to qualify based off of. Okay, and I just want to clarify that because the other ones that do like setbacks and stuff, that they don't change the number of units, they just change the dimensions of the unit. And I think it's important because, you know, and I'm sure everyone in this room knows this, you know, we have limited capability to mold this. So we're trying to stay within our purview, which is following state law. So, okay, thank you, Gene. I'm not trying to preach. I just think this is important for people to understand. Any other questions for Gene? Yeah. One more, Commissioner DeGiorgio.
Hi there. So in the staff report discusses public art concession, and I didn't see that in the conditions of approval or the resolution. Is that something, did I overlook it or is that normally included?
The concession should be in the resolution. If that's not, I will double check it. It is not in the conditions of approval. Typically, we have public art in the conditions to make sure that it's either gone to the public art committee at the right time or the fee is collected in lieu. In this case, since it's a concession, neither of those conditions will apply. But I will double check the resolution to make sure that the concession is in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So at this point, we will, if the applicant would like to come up, and you have 10 minutes, is that correct, 10 minutes?
Up to 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Is that on? My name's Brian Griggs. I was here in January in front of you. And my partner, Jeff Stone, I believe was with me last time. He is home taking care of his wife and 3 kids, and they all have the flu. So Jeff, if there's any technical questions that I'm not privy to, he'll be able to call in. I think he's monitoring this. I'm also here with David Marshall as part of our development team, and then Isaiah Stackhouse, who is our architect, is also available. And I think you know the history of this property. In March of 2022, so just over 3 years ago, we made an application for a 53-unit project that at the time was in conformance with the 35 units to the acre zoning, and with a density bonus at that time too. And then in essence, over the last 3 years, have been waiting for March 28th to come around when the housing element was finally certified, and the rezonings occurred actually in early part of February, so we could formally have our project deemed complete. We always wanted to do a larger project in the site. We actually looked at one point when the zoning was going to go up to 75 units to the acre to possibly do up to 117 units, but decided it just wasn't the proper project for this location in Lafayette. And some of the early iterations you may have seen in January did not have the setbacks that we have, did not have that stair step to really try and take into account the topography of the site. but we also wanted to hit the density goals that the city has for the arena numbers. This project must have, at 88% of the zoning, about 64 units as a minimum. So it's not a huge variation from what you must build in order to do something in town. This, I think Jeannie did a really good job of talking about changes we've made, adding the third three-bedroom unit, or the three-bedroom unit, which was one of your requests. We have made some small tweaks to the exterior to try and address some of the design review comments. As Jeannie said, we didn't change the facade on the south side. We added some landscaping. We worked with Mr. Moore, who had some objections about how we exited the garage. In today's letter, I've been in development for 44 years, and I try and be sensitive to the process, try and be sensitive to the neighbors. It was a pretty unique situation in that the seller of this property, and we didn't own the property until late last year, we were forbidden from talking to the neighbors or doing any announcements whatsoever. We actually asked that seller to contact the Lombardos behind us on our behalf to see if there, could be some engagement. It sounds like that didn't happen at all. Since January happened, I don't know what changes, honestly, we could have made versus the project we have today. We're proud of the project. We think it'll be something that the city, doesn't by any means desperately need, but I think it'll provide a gateway into our town. I think as far as, the objections of the current and recent comments, they are legitimate. It's a big project. They are going to be, to the west. I think normally we would have had engagement during this entire process, but it's a pretty unique situation that we really could not do that. And so as far as the noticing, I don't know how that goes. I don't know if I'm just going to kind of stay clear of that because we were a little surprised. We hadn't heard anything because of the impacts of the project, but between the 53 units, between study sessions, this is probably the 6th or 7th meeting that we've had. And unfortunately, after working on this for 3 years and now owning it for about 5 months with no real income, we need to gain approval and really start construction next year. So we hope we'll get your support. I can answer any questions you may have about variances, waivers, concessions, incentives, density. Fire away if you'd like.
Great, thank you. Let's see if we have any questions up here real quick. For the Vice Chair, anyone else have questions? Yeah, Commissioner Mason?
Yeah, couple of questions. First one, in the letter that we received, there was, looks like with your neighbors, there was comments about whether or not they had their access taken away. There's landscaping across their access easement. Do you know anything about that?
No. In the back of our property?
Well, they said they were going to speak today, and I'll leave it to them to.
I think
Greg?
maybe their public comment.
I believe we have a speaker slip from the neighbors, so they would be available to answer your questions.
You'll
And
get a chance to rebut. So-
Okay, yeah, why don't I wait and here it is, and I'll.
And then the other thing is I'm trying to kind of mentally picture how this thing is going together. One of the things that always throws me is the city of Lafayette defines building height differently than the CBC, and everything's built off of the CBC. So the other question they relate to soil stability. I'm assuming you'll have a geotechnical engineer retained.
Yeah, we've already done that.
Okay. My concerns weren't so much soil stability. The fear was if they use drive piles, would the vibrations affect the East Bay Mud aqueduct? East Bay Mud engineer's going to get a chance to review that. I realize it's just a process thing, but I was asking.
They will definitely, and they're on record as wanting to review it, and once we get a design that we will be put in front of them, we will not be able to get a permit until they're happy, I'm sure.
And then the other thing is, it's right around 60, 65 feet is when you start switching from wood to steel. Again, the CBC height definition. I'm seeing this as still a wood frame building.
It'd be type 3,
Type
a
3,
big chunk of it,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
But we also met with the fire marshal once, and we have a meeting with him next Monday to discuss AMMRs for, there's no, I think you probably know, a ladder truck that can get up there, so there's alternatives we're going to have to explore. And again, we won't get a permit until they're happy.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
First, thank you for I guess, aligning with the below market rate unit, switching the 1 to the 3-bedroom. I know it was a concern last time, so I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you. My only question was on the, I guess, I didn't see it anywhere in the application. I did look at the very nice preparation of the noise impact, particularly the construction, and learned there's the 80 decibel limit, and that by your own formula there, the noise at the multifamily to the west would be 79. And then if you change like 1 pixel on Google Maps measuring the distance in feet, suddenly you hit 80. And so I didn't know, was there already planned integrated any kind of noise abatements? I mean, outside of like, construction limit hours by regulation, et cetera, but any kind of sound dampening or anything like that? Because the measurements from the center of the project, as opposed to what a lot of the construction with the hillside is going to have to be on the west side, which would then obviously push it further towards the existing residents. Is there anything that's?
I am unaware of it. We are under construction on 20 units in Lafayette Circle and have neighbors all around us. So I think sensitivity to the neighbors and collaboration, certainly with the Lombardos, that'll be a consideration. We'll try and be, the hours, I think, of construction are fairly defined. I don't mean to be vague. Jeff's actually the contractor into our partnership. But I'm happy to get back to you with more information if you'd like.
Thank you.
Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the explanation about what the contact that you weren't allowed to have when you were in the process of purchasing the property. But in the vein of collaboration and working with your neighbor, one of the comments that we received was regarding landscaping. And even though the massing can't be changed because you're not changing the height of the building or anything like that, that's just going to unfortunately be the way it is for that neighboring property owner. But as far as the landscaping, since the landscaping is a condition of approval to get to that later, is that something, I guess it's a question/ask, are you willing to work with the neighbor on the landscaping and get some feedback into the type of landscaping that would best help the neighbor out as far as obscuring any visual impacts as possible, as much as possible?
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about this other question that Commissioner Mason had about the easement and that sort of thing. But I think if it's screening landscaping, certainly, because that works both ways.
Yeah,
It helps screen us from them, they screen themselves from us.
Yeah, that's all.
We do have landscape plans approved, but I think with most of the projects we've done, if there's an appropriate upgrade or
appropriate
size.
species that help.
Yeah, and, landscape plans show it 5 years in. So day one, it's more important. We're going to be going through the marketing process to try and address it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Radnich?
Thank you. I do have one question, if you can help me remember, if you remember. So back in January, I was just kind of looking at the staff report. It looked like the concession was for the inclusionary unit. And then is this the first time we've seen it where the concession is for public art? So it shifted from January to now, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Regarding the change in the garage entrance, I gather, if I understood correctly, it's because the neighbor objected to their initial plans.
That was part of it. The other part of it is the access, there's an easement, and I think Jeannie's diagram showed it. It's a little complicated. We had to stay on the easement that we have. And it's one of the complicating issues that I know was brought up in the letter earlier today is what is Terrace Way? How private is it? Who can go through? How narrow does it get? But the impetus behind it was Mr. Moore, where we would have pulled straight out of the garage and had lights at night into his apartment building.
Oh, okay.
And so that's when we angled it down.
One of my concerns was around safety, and not so much of the cars, because you've got essentially two entrances, exits, kind of merging, And I was looking at the plans and thinking about how pedestrians that have, once they've parked, they want it, I guess, when I look at the plans, they would have to go to the east side to get to the stairs, basically, this is the second level, right? And a lot of lazy people would just walk back down the ramp and then back up the other ramp to get to the closest elevator or stairs. So I didn't know if you had thought through the concerns on pedestrian safety. Is there a gate there?
We actually thought through with the city's assistance and a consultant we talked to about access, not so much pedestrians walking out of the garage, but more cars and the intersection of people coming down Terrace Way. And certainly we've all seen in some of the parking garages and other things where there's a car notification. So we haven't fully vetted that, but I'm sure we'll end up with that. As far as the pedestrians, one of the nice things is they're condominiums, so they're going to be homeowners. And so I think in some ways they'll be generally used to path of travel and trained. If it's a signage issue or striping, I think we could explore that. But candidly, we haven't looked to that specific question you have, but it's a good one. Not to say it wasn't a good one, but.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go to public comments now, and there'll probably be something after, and you're welcome to, I don't know how long they'll be talking, so. So now we're going to open it up for public comments, and if you.
Thank you, Chair. The first speaker, Salvatore Lombardo, is ceding his 3 minutes to Anthony Lombardo. So Anthony Lombardo, you have up to 6 minutes to speak at the lectern using the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Lombardo. I'm one of the 3 owners of 3572 Terrace Way, which is the building right immediately back of the proposed building that you have. In regards to what Jeannie was saying, I wish I could have had a comment to her at the time, because she basically said that they're sending out the notices at the time. We didn't get anything in January, and there was one that was supposed to be sent out in March for the March meeting. We got nothing for that one either. And then I was also thinking, this project was approved last year for a 50-unit thing, so we should have been getting unit or notices at those times. So how many notices and applications you put in at that time, our meetings? We never got any of them, and within last week plus a few days, we get this notice. So this was really kind of a surprise for us. It was a surprise to us. I emailed you this morning the detailed, more detailed what I'm going to talk about since we're time limited. So it seems like you reviewed some of that, so thank you for that. Some of the highlights of those concerns would be, for the residents there, would be the quality of life that they have. I don't know if you've seen the site that they have there, but basically it's on a hillside. It's got oak trees. You see the mountains. You see it's all level from below us at this particular time. You see Mount Diablo and that type of thing. Now what you're going to see is, from the levels that we have, maybe a 50-foot wall of a building. And that building, that wall's not even going to be to the building. It's going to be from here to the wall. Well, from their property line over, it's 10 feet and the wall starts to go up. From our property line over, we have a driveway, which is, accommodates one car. And then we have balconies that go over there. So total distance to that wall is going to be like 15, 17 feet. So somebody on that balcony is not going to look up like this and go, wow, I still can't even see the sun, or whatever, right? So that's going to drastically change for them. Since we got notice last week, it's kind of like, are you kidding me? Who would build a 50-foot wall in front of us like that? And then I know you guys were basically looking at, and you were discussing it today. You said that the front of the building was tiered to make it look less massive, to make it look better. But at the back of the building, we did nothing to this 50-foot wall that's right in front of me. I could have leveled that off a little bit too, which would have made it better for us. Or we could have moved that wall over 10 feet, which would have got less restrictive. So in that regard, there's also a fence that goes across here, and I know that you guys basically just lowered the fence, but that fence could have been 10 feet high at this time. Now it's going to be down 6, which is better, but still, when the people are agreeing with all this, and you got a 10-foot fence and you got a 50-foot wall in front of you, and we're saying it's okay, and it's from here to that wall, it's not okay. In our minds, if we don't really need the fence there either. I don't know why the fence would even be there. It's just going to hinder us from going into the parking where we have an underground, not an underground, but below apartment level parking. It's just going to make it harder because now you got a hard stop for the cars. So to manipulate parking is going to also be inferior for these people. Then we were talking about construction noise, which is going to go on for a long period of time. So the people that are there not only lost their balconies, their privacies, right, that they had before. Privacy, by the way, is another thing that I should say, is because when we're talking about the 50-foot wall there and the closeness of it, I have a balcony, which I used to be free of people looking into my apartments. And basically now we got a wall of people now peering into the balconies that people are sitting on that they can't really see anything anyway. And not only will they be looking at the balconies, they'll be looking into the living rooms of these people because it's very close. Now, if they close their drapes, that's the only way that they get light into the apartment. So I don't know exactly what they're going to plan on doing with that. But as far as the noise, we're looking at it and saying, well, you know, the noise is the noise, and if you're going to have construction, you're going to have construction. But it's going to be a long time for this project. So we're looking at it and saying, well, right now we don't have soundproof windows in there, so the noise level is going to be pretty high. So we're looking at putting in maybe soundproof windows in there, but then we'd look to the developer to pay for those because, you know, that building has been there for 60 plus years, and the windows that are in there right now are perfectly fine. You know, they serve their purpose and it's nice. The only reason why we need new windows would be because of the noise levels. Property values that we have. The project is substantially going to reduce the value of our property. It's going to be harder to keep tenants, and will make the units less desirable to rent, even at reduced rent prices, because the value of the property is gone because you don't even have a view anymore. For one, you don't even have the privacy that you had before. There's been a discussion, there has never been a discussion to compensation for this negative value of the property, much less any contact from the city or developer in this regard. Again, we just heard about this last week. To rectify this, I think the developer should monetarily compensate for the loss of the property as determined by a neutral third party to determine what the value was before and after when the building's complete. We were talking about parking. Right now, as you're driving up Terrace Way, you get to the top of the property where the new property line will be, and you make an immediate right turn there, and you go right into our parking lot. All that's open right now. When you look at the plans that are here for the facility, there's a big planter that now comes out in a round fashion, which is right in that direct same location that's there. That's what it appears to me when I look at the drawings. So I'm looking at, well, how are we going to access our parking area now? So now we're going to be asked, I don't know how we're going to do it, but basically come in from a different angle, whatever, which will eliminate 2 of our parking spaces, which is unacceptable. So what we're asking there is basically to the property line that separates the 2 of us. We're asking that if you take that property line, we're asking to extend that property line to Terrace Way, and anything to the left of that would be something that wouldn't be obstruction free, was what we're asking for. The traffic on there, and I'll just finish up with this, the traffic on the Terrace Way, since there's another 186 parking stalls there, we're going to have quite a bit of traffic. And I noticed on your planning commissioner staff report, you said that it narrows to 10 feet while still maintaining 2-way vehicle traffic. I could tell you, You go up that road, you don't have two-way vehicle traffic in some of those areas there, especially as you're coming up on the hill towards our property lines. You might, for sure, at one point down the hill, middle of it, you'll have a constriction that only holds one car. If you're going up to the property line where it divides us, and there hasn't been a time yet that I've been up there that basically says that when another car comes and I'm coming, one of us doesn't wait for the other one because it's too narrow to pass. There's a parking over here, and if you wanted to pass or come to each other, you're going to be within that much of the parked cars there. So anyway, those are our concerns. So thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you. We really appreciate you telling us. Let me just make sure that someone doesn't have questions.
Sure.
I do want to preface, it's hard to say this. So we're abiding by state law, and I'm not trying to say that we're not taking care of what we need to, but, I'm just going to be quiet and let anyone else have any questions if they have any.
How many units are in your property?
6.
Thank you.
It's a sixplex that was built in the 1964.
6. All right, and I'll go now. I remember what I was going to say. I would ask that after the meeting, you get with the developer and make sure that you guys exchange communications and contacts, and just in a good neighborly way, discuss it. The limits of what we can impose are very defined, and they're beyond what you're asking. Just telling you straight out, they're beyond what you're asking. So my recommendation would be that you good neighborly talk to your neighbor and see, and I expect them to talk to you too, and work on that. Are there any other questions?
Let me say that it seems to me some of those things should be under your control, like access to parking.
Well, in terms of technical things like that, yes, sir, there are. And those are things we'll ask, we'll go through this process, and we might ask the planner to help out. And, these are all reviewed by staff, Public Works, engineers. So I couldn't say that I can technically answer that.
Yes.
But some of the things about 50-foot wall and stuff like that, this is, the California is in dire need of housing. And so the state has made some pretty aggressive laws that have basically taken away the discretionary decision-making from bodies like this. And so as long as applicants follow certain rules, objective standards, and abide by the current zoning.
Yeah, I understand that. I've read all those things that have been coming across in California rules. But I would also say, like, wherever I'm going to put a wall to another existing building, the person that's doing the project has some capability of, even though they want 90 units, you can have 90 units, you can still come back 10 feet. You're just going to go up another floor. And you said, well, you have to make concessions. Well, that's a concession. You say that's going to go higher. You still get your 90 units, but you just move it over 10 feet. So what's another floor on top of what you got now? It's already going to be, an eyesight for a lot of people. So if you got another floor, it's kind of the same. So when you say that you don't have discretion, I think you have some discretion.
I mean, to be honest, sir, we can't tell them how to design it. We can ask them, and we've gone through this multiple times with this developer over the last few years. And you're right, we did push the density back because we were looking at from the perspective of the entire town, and having the front wall, and I'll just speak for myself, deemed a bigger nuisance than the back wall. I wasn't specifically thinking about your building, but I was just thinking about the overall design.
I know.
And so, but we can't tell them how to design it. We can ask them to do things, and some things they do. And that's why I'm recommending to you to definitely talk to them and see what you guys can work out, because you're neighbors and you're going to be neighbors for a long time. So, any other questions? Commissioner Mason.
Yeah. Thank you for showing up and talking to us. Most of what you said, we've heard before on different projects through the different cities, and it's, hard for us because our sympathies are with you. Perhaps if staff could pull up, I'm concerned about your concerns about the access to the parking in Terrace Way. Could staff pull up that map or that plan so you can show us, so everybody's really clear about what your concern is?
Sure, appreciate that.
Could you toggle the source back to the presentation?
Do you know what page, like, what is that?
Thank you.
There it is. Oh, yeah. It was up there first.
It was up and there we go.
Which sheet is that?
This is the project plans.
A23.
A23.
I'm guessing that's what you're asking about. Just give them a show.
Okay, let me switch back.
Can I approach the screen? This area here, this is our building here. This is the massive building over here. This is the wall that's coming up right now. This is the area. That's rooms. Right now, tourist ways here, coming up, and then Stewart's area is over here at this particular time. If you make a turn right here, you go up to her apartment right here. So all this right now is clear. Stewart's property line is right here, and it's got bushes here. And all this is direct line with the driveway. So you're finding the planner here. Right now, there's parking, two cars here. We've got a big planner here. And I can't go in this way, and I can't go in this way. So I can't access my building.
Okay, thank you. The applicant has a rebuttal, and you will give Sim a chance to work that out. Yeah, a lot of times half the problem is just making sure everybody understands what everybody else's concerns are. And that's why it's hard when they don't have the opportunity to speak to each other.
I think we're good, but thank you very much. Do appreciate all your questions. Do we have any more public speakers? If we have one, if not, you can go next after. I just want to make sure we didn't have someone already teed up.
The next speaker who submitted a speaker slip is Kayla Gomez.
Okay, and does he have a card in, Greg?
No, but at the rear of the room, there are blue speaker slips. You're welcome to fill one out, and I'd be happy to introduce you when the time is right.
Good afternoon, members of Planning Commission and community. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Kayla. I'm a field representative with the NorCal Carpenters Union 152, which covers Lafayette. As we consider this development project before us. Sorry. Start over. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Kayla. I'm a field representative with the NorCal Carpenters, Local 152, which covers Lafayette. As we consider this development project before us, I want to address a critical aspect that will affect our community long after the construction is complete. It's the importance of hiring responsible contractors who uphold area standards wages, specifically in the line with prevailing wages of carpenters. The prevailing wage is not just a number, it represents fair pay that skilled tradespeople in our region deserve. These are the wages that allow local workers to support their families, contribute to our local economy, and ensure high-quality workmanship on projects that affect our community infrastructure and safety. When developers use contractors who pay below the standard wage, it not only undermines the labor market, but also leads to substandard work and higher long-term costs. Cutting corners on labor means we risk being delayed, going over budget, or needing costly repairs down the road. By hiring contractors who adhere to prevailing wage, developers can ensure a well-trained, experienced workforce that takes pride in their work and delivers the quality our community expects. This is more than a labor issue. It's about maintaining the integrity of our development and building a foundation that benefits all residents. both now and in the future. I urge the Planning Commission to hold developers accountable by requiring responsible contractors who pay area standard wages to ensure both our workers and our communities are treated fairly and with respect. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Mason?
Just real quickly, do you see this as residential or commercial prevailing wage?
So this would be residential.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, we're ready for next public speaker.
This just in, we have one additional speaker in the room on this agenda item. I believe it's Ian. Please step up to the microphone and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Ian Baird, and I am the owner next to Tony Lombardo on Terrace Way. So where is Terrace Way on the map? Because I didn't receive any notification. Neither did my son, and my son and I own the building next to Tony Lombardo, and we didn't receive any notification. What are the requirements for notification?
Typically, it's a radius, and then all the addresses are mailed to. It's a radius.
What's the radius?
300 feet?
Several hundred feet. You are definitely within it.
Yeah, well, hold on, sir, why don't we do this? Why don't you go ahead and we can ask the planner who can address that, but it's
From the property line? Is a notification measured from the property line?
Yes.
The radius? Okay. And I didn't receive any notification whatsoever of this project. How many stories is it? Just
7.
7 stories?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I think, right?
how long will the project take to complete?
Why don't you go through your questions, because I don't have all the answers, but the applicant will get up and address the questions afterwards. I don't know their construction schedule. We don't have that right now.
Okay. All right. No, those were my questions.
Okay, so
Notification.
how long? Yeah, and we'll ask our planner if she can tell us the distance from the property line, but I would assume you would have been in it.
Okay. And just to let you know, Terrace Way is a private road. It's not a public road, it's a private road.
Okay.
Does that make a difference?
Does it make a difference for what, sir?
To the project?
I mean, the planner takes that into account, but it doesn't, if you're asking, does that make a project go or no go? I would say no, that doesn't make a difference.
And who is the planner?
Jean, she's on the phone right now. She can answer some questions potentially.
Okay,
But
all right, thank you.
Jean, maybe if you could give us the distance that the public notices would have gone out from the property line, and then if you can address the private drive question, it was a little open-ended, if you can.
Sure. So typically it is 300 feet. In this case, it was noticed to 500 feet because it's a larger project.
Okay.
With respect to Terrace Way, the private-public aspect of Terrace Way does not relate to how the notice goes out. So it's purely based on where the boundaries of the parcel lines sit.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. You have a question for Jean?
Yeah, one more question on the notices. How do you handle on projects like these two apartment owners, non-resident owners? Because I was thinking maybe that, if you just send it to the people at the apartments, they would just toss it.
We do send it to the property owner address as well.
Thank you, that's why I wanted.
So even if they live in a different community and not at the subject parcel,
Yeah,
it is sent to the property owner as well.
okay, thank you.
All right. Did you have something? So I believe that's all the public comments.
I will check to see if there is anyone on the Zoom meeting who would like to raise their hand and offer a remote comment. If you would, please go ahead and hit the raise hand function now. Seeing none.
Okay, great. So we're going to close the public comment, and I'm going to ask the applicant to come back up, and to the best of your ability, if you could address any of the questions, I would appreciate that. The applicant's going to discuss to us, and public comment period is closed, so I just ask, let's not turn this into a discussion session. It's this way. Please.
Will do. So we're certainly very happy to meet and collaborate with the neighbors. I feel, as I said before, that they weren't noticed, and so this is going to be an accelerated process trying to do what we can do to address the concerns. The issues about access and parking are certainly something that we're willing to explore. As far as construction noise, we do have requirements not only both within the codes, but also just practically speaking. And, we have, as I referenced earlier, next to our 20 units in Lafayette Circle, we've probably got 80 apartments within 150 yards of us. And fortunately, there have been literally zero complaints to us, and I don't think there's been many to the city's code enforcement or to the city staff. And so it may not seem like it building a 50-foot wall in someone's backyard that we're empathetic, but we try and do the best we can. I think partially evidenced by, as I said earlier, what we consider to be the properly sized project that was well designed. That's something that as developers we're going to be proud of, and I think as a city would be proud of. Unfortunately, for some people, it's just going to impact them, and there's no two ways about it. But if there's a logical solution to not having a fence and having more landscaping, we're certainly willing to do that. I know that was mentioned in passing earlier. I'm happy to provide my information, and my partner and I both live here in town. So, any specific questions about, I think you answered the 7 stories. I think as far as the construction time period, Lafayette Circle is a little smaller. We're probably going to be about 15 months down there, so I'm guessing 18 to 21 months, but I don't know. Jeff's the builder, really, that would be able to tell you as we go through the process.
Okay. Any questions up here? Commissioner Heising?
Real quick, I'm looking at the west elevation, sheet A3.5, and when you look at the other 3 elevations, obviously there's a ton of windows on the other elevations. And I just want clarification on the west elevation. Are those windows, or is that just an exterior architectural feature?
I think it's a clear story. If I remember the plan, I don't have it in front of me. I think that's the circulation corridor along the west end of the building. And so the units were intending to face into the courtyard and to face outward as opposed to westernly.
Okay, so the units themselves, there won't be a privacy view as you look in.
Correct, if I remember the plan accurately. The circulation corridor will be along that exterior wall.
Yeah, okay, and
maybe not, excuse me, with the exception, I think, maybe the corner units.
Yeah, in the renderings, the windows on the other elevations are, the drawings, they're shaded a different color. So I got the impression that they weren't actual windows into the living space. Okay.
That's correct.
That's my only question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Vice Chair?
So as you may have recalled on the sheet A2.5, but the driveway access, it seems like there's some planters there, and this is sort of like elevation. I'm just trying to know if you can speak to that on the sort of southwest corner of the property, the like group.
Down near Oak Hill? Southwest, so down, on the back corner?
Yeah, essentially what they were pointing out about trying to block, it looks like currently it looks like it may sort of like impede and block some of their driveway as it exists currently.
In that upper corner?
Parking access?
Yeah, no, that portion of the property, honestly, if you look at the configuration of a footprint of a building, was kind of superfluous in some ways. All of Terrace Way is pretty complicated on easements and access and who has what rights, and there's utilities that run down the street. And so we got to know it fairly well, and that's actually why we moved our garage entry, because, perfected rights of access for us to actually cross someone else's property were not perfect. It seems like the neighbors have worked together for quite a while. I don't know how it's gone with Mr. Moore. He's owned a variety of properties on the other side of the street. And it sounds like you worked with the sellers too when they had to access the property. And we're willing to very much sit down and figure out, our goal is not to be those people.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mason?
Just to follow up on last questions, are you required, or will you need, or are you required to have ladder access to over Terrace Way to the back of your
No.
property?
To the best of our knowledge, we have not gotten the final approval from Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. But there are alternative means and methods we can use with type of construction, with standpipes, with certain stairways that are rated.
Because I'm also thinking about Lombardo's property, which is just past there, but they can be serviced with a regular fire truck.
We will not, to the best of my knowledge, be changing any of their access to their property with our project.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for us to discuss, and I will remind us what our charge is. Just a second, other than reviewing this. But does anyone have anything they want to start discussing?
Chair, if I may, just to address the public notice
Okay.
comments. Our mailing list is of 26 different property owners within the minimum 300 square foot, 300-foot radius of the project boundary. We're showing Ian Baird was notified, sent to PO Box 4899 Walnut Creek, California. And the Pioneer 1855 LLC, which we understand the other speakers are part of, at 330 Barrow Court, Walnut Creek. And we have a map of all of the property owner locations, if you would like to see that. It goes as far as Ohio, but most are situated near the subject property. But I just wanted to, those were the two commenters that said that they did not receive anything. They are on our mailing list. The only notice that was returned to the city as undeliverable was from the, essentially the Lafayette Town Center apartments, which are further afield, further away from the subject property than the two speakers. So we know it went at least that far. So I just wanted to be able to speak to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're not in public comment now, but I would just say afterwards, if you want to, after we're done with the meeting, by all means, you can discuss with the planning director or any of us. But, you know, so we've closed public comment. We've heard from the applicant. We're now in deliberation up here. And so, Commissioner Badnich?
I will start by saying it is a big project. It is allowed under the zoning. We've seen this project multiple times, and every time I do appreciate that the applicant's team has listened to what the different commissions have provided feedback on and what the different commoners have provided feedback on. What I heard tonight was that the applicant is willing to have further conversations for interactions with neighbors that haven't yet happened for whatever reason. So I do appreciate that as a planning commissioner. I'm a little bummed about the public art concession. I understand it, and it's the applicant's right. It is the first big building you will see when you get off of the freeway. And as a gateway to Lafayette, I'm a little bummed about that, but it's allowed, right? So I have no problem with that. Yeah, I just appreciate that the applicant tonight, hearing public comments that were presented late due to miscommunications of mailers, that the parties sound willing to have conversations. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, just, I was just rolling through the conditions of approval to see how construction noise is addressed. There's no noise producing construction allowed on Sundays or holidays, but I guess I would just ask that, or maybe we can be directed to another condition that I'm just not seeing. that addresses noise, or is it just in general in our noise ordinance? Construction noise is addressed? Okay. I'm seeing,
Correct.
okay. And then regarding parking and access, I can understand that there's probably easements out there for access. There's probably, well, let me just say this. The building to the west of the project that we're discussing tonight cannot be landlocked. So there's going to have to be access. Now, whether there's appropriate easements in place to allow that, that's a different story. But I appreciate the applicant's comment that, as Commissioner Radins just stated, that there's a willingness to work with the adjacent property owner to continue to maintain access, which can't be denied. They're going to have to be able to get to their building. Those are my comments so far.
So far. Okay, one shot.
I reserve the right to comment.
Anyone else? All right, then I'm going to do last comments, and then I'm going to move it on. So if you have any reserved rights, get them out. I just want to remind us what we're here to do is hold a public hearing, check, review the revised proposal, check, and then vote on a resolution that's been provided by staff. So with that, I would just echo everything the Commissioner Radnich said, and earlier Vice Chair Deming said about the applicant with the inclusionary housing. I was very happy to read that. So everything that we have asked for, and some of those were just asks, not demands, to this point, this applicant has been very willing to work with the city. Some of the things that I think some of the public speakers are asking for are beyond what we would ask for, beyond what we can ask for. But I would ask you, like I have already, to talk to the applicant. They're part of the community. Not that that matters, but they are a part of this community. And so I think as mutual people in this community, hopefully you guys can work that out. So with that, I would gladly take any motion that makes sense.
I would like to ask a question for staff before we make a motion. I did flip through the resolution, and I also don't see the public art concession. So if we make a motion tonight to adopt the resolution, can the resolution still be adjusted by staff to include the concession?
You would so amend in your motion and say, we add a recital acknowledging that the applicant has requested and is receiving a concession/incentive for the public art fee, which would otherwise apply, and we can do that based on your motion.
I would like to make a motion of what staff just said to amend the resolution to include the public art concession, and thereby adopt resolution 2025-02.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Sorry, friendly.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, a friendly, we're also still recommending
And
approval
recommending
to
it.
the city council.
And recommending approval to city council.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries. 2 weeks? Okay, it's going to city council.
So we will be sending out new public notice for the city council hearing, and I would ask that we get contact information for alternative means besides the U.S. Postal Service, so that we can communicate that electronically to the speakers this evening.
Would you like them to come up to you after the meeting? Is that the best way?
that would be fine, or they can send us an email. But if they'd like to receive it in addition to the U.S. Postal Service, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. All right, so thank you, everyone, on that one. We're going to move on now. Let me get back to the agenda. So now we have housing element implementation. And I'm sorry, who is?
Stephanie Cervantes is going to present on that this
Stephanie
evening.
Cervantes did it. Is that, am I missing it?
Next page.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, Stephanie. Stephanie, please.
Good evening, commissioners, members of the public. My name is Stephanie Cervantes, Senior Planner with the Planning Department, and I will be presenting the item tonight on housing element implementation. So just a quick summary on the housing element update and adoption process. So in April of 2024, the City Council directed final revisions of the housing element, which were sent to HCD. HCD over the summer did let the city know that the housing element would be certified if they found that the element was compliant with state law following completion of the necessary rezonings and readoption of the element by City Council, which was done in January of this year. The City Council amended the zoning ordinance and zoning maps to rezone certain areas, completing that task. At the end of March, the city was notified that our housing element was certified, and now staff is beginning some of the implementation programs, some of the easier ones that require just simple zoning text amendments. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. We're recommending municipal code revisions to the following sections. There's a list there. There's a few new sections as well, and we're also recommending removal of some additional sections. So starting off with program 7.1D, permanent supportive housing. The program calls for allowing permanent supportive housing by right in zones where multifamily and mixed uses are permitted. The existing code already allows supportive housing in all of the zoning districts except R12. The proposed amendment would be in compliance with AB 2162, Government Code Section 6561A, and it would allow supportive housing by right, meeting certain criteria. There is an additional alternative amendment that could be considered that would revise the permitted uses in the R12 zoning district. For program 7.1E, group homes for 7 or more persons, the housing element program calls for the adoption of code to allow group homes by right in certain districts. The existing code does reference group homes in Chapter 6.5, Chapter 6.5.1, as well as Chapter 6.34. And those are the chapters related to general provisions, senior housing overlay district, and reasonable accommodation. There's a specific reference in Section 6-534B, which does limit the occupancy to 6 or fewer minors, specifically minors. The proposed amendment would revise that code section to allow all types of group homes, including group homes for individuals with special needs, disabilities, recovery and sober living, and community care facilities. Staff is not recommending an alternative amendment. The next topic is emergency shelters. That's program 7.1F. The objective of the program calls for adopting code to ensure compliance with state emergency shelter requirements and allowing other forms of interim housing by right in certain districts. The existing code, the city has existing code in Chapter 6.35, emergency shelters, that contains a narrow definition of what emergency shelters is. The proposed amendment would revise the definition, clarify that the use is allowed by right, and also clarify capacity. It would be doing so by extending the definition to include shelters, interim uses, navigation centers, bridge housing, respite, and recuperative care intended for short-term housing. It also clarifies that the use is permitted by right with no special use or conditional use permit required, and it sets a ratio as compliant with state law of 200 square feet per person. Staff is not recommending an alternative amendment. The next program is 7.1G, reasonable accommodation. The housing element program calls for revised codes to include only objective findings when issuing reasonable accommodation permits. We do have existing code, section 6-3407, with findings that need to be made in order for the city to grant a reasonable accommodation. The proposed amendment would strike out subsection C, which states, which is a finding that states potential impacts on surrounding uses, which is something staff would need to evaluate if and when we would be approving a reasonable accommodation application. The alternative amendment for this program would be to use HCD guidance to revise all of the findings. That would make all of the findings for permit issuance objective. Next program we're discussing is 10.3C, farm worker housing. The housing element calls for revising the code to treat employee and farm worker housing of 6 or fewer persons as a single-family structure, and to allow the use if more than 12 units or 36 beds are proposed as an agricultural use. The city has no existing code in terms of employee or farm worker housing. The proposed amendment would revise section 6-350 to include employee and farm worker housing under the single-family use definition. Alternatively, the city could revise section 6-534 to include employee farm worker housing under supportive care uses. In order to comply with the housing element program as well, staff is recommending that the city eliminate all references to agricultural zones in the zoning text amendment. The city does not have any agricultural zones on our general land use or in our zoning map. And there is no alternative amendment for this. The next program is 10.3D, low barrier navigation centers. The housing element calls to revise the code to allow low barrier navigation centers in mixed use and non-residential zones that permit multifamily. The city has no existing language in regards to low barrier navigation centers. The proposed amendment would be in compliance with Government Code Section 65662 and would allow low barrier navigation centers as a use permitted by right in certain districts that offer services that connect individuals to permanent housing. There is no identified alternative amendment. The following program deals with the definition of family. That's program 10.3E. The program calls for the city to ensure the definition of family is consistent with state and federal law. The city does have an existing definition under section 6-323. The proposed amendment would revise that code section as well as add section 6-350.5 for a single housekeeping unit. The combined definitions for both of these would mean that family should mean one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit that are familiar with each other, non-transient or temporary, spend time together, have access to common areas, and share entrances, and food storage facilities. There is no proposed alternative amendment. The next program is 6.1C, Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. The program itself has many objectives that would require text amendments to the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, but we're focusing on a small component tonight, which is a small need that arose from the rezonings that allow multifamily in areas outside of the downtown area. The current code, the Exclusionary Housing Ordinance, only applies in the downtown area, so the proposed amendment would revise the chapter to eliminate any references to downtown and replace them with application for citywide. There is no alternative amendment. The next topic is related to vacant lot definitions. There is no specific language in the housing element that speaks to this definition. However, there is general language that requires that the city implement state laws. And the need for a vacant lot definition comes from state laws that are applied differently to developed versus undeveloped vacant lots. There is no existing definition, and so staff is proposing adding section 6-358.5, which would provide a definition for a vacant lot that could be easily understood by the public and implemented by staff. There is no alternative amendment for this. And the last topic for discussion is adding the zoning code summary land use table that is currently used as a resource, has been used as a resource by staff and the public for many years, available on our website. It contains clarifying language on housing element opportunity sites and the ability for ministerial approval for certain residential projects. There are no proposed changes to permitted uses, uses permitted with a land use permit, or uses that would be prohibited in certain zoning districts. The proposed amendment would simply take that existing table that's currently just used as a resource and codify it in the municipal code. As of today, 5 p.m., there was no public comments that were received regarding this item. At this time, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission discuss the proposed text amendments, provide direction to staff, and continue the hearing to May 5th, 2025 for approval of Resolution 2025-03, recommending that City Council adopt the zoning tax amendments. That does conclude my presentation. I do have text slides with the text that I can make available during the discussion.
Thank you. Does anyone have any clarifying questions? Commissioner Radnich?
Thank you. Do you mind going to 7.1E, the group homes for 7 or more persons? So I read what's on your slide, and I've read in your staff report. I'm not understanding. Can you say it a different way? So is it for, so what, the existing code is only making reference to minors that are in homes of 6 or fewer?
Yes, so our existing code only allows group homes that would provide care for 6 or fewer minors. State law requires that group homes allow all sorts of different types of 24-hour care, which can include individuals with special needs, certain disabilities, other types of needs for residential care that are not necessarily minors. It could be people of any age, including the elderly. So the proposed amendment would be to allow all types of group homes.
And why is it 7 persons, 7 or more? Is it because 7 defines a group home? Or where did 7 come from?
I believe that comes from state code.
Okay.
So as you can see, I can pull up the verbatim language for this.
So what happens if someone wants to come in with a group home for 6 people? Are they allowed to?
Yes. So the proposed text amendment would allow group homes for 6 or fewer people. Number 1, subsection 1 here would be for group homes of 6 or fewer people that are not licensed. Number 2 would be for 6 or fewer residents that are licensed. And number 3 would be for group homes of 7 or more residents with disabilities.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So I have a question. So section 7, you provided the definition of family, but earlier in the staff report, and I just want to confirm that that definition of family is also the same definition of family in section 5, the farm worker housing, 6-350 single family dwelling. It references occupancy as a residence of one family, that's the same definition of family, correct?
So the definition under farm worker housing, that's for single-family unit.
Yes.
Under the definition of family, that's just a definition of family. So it would be a family living in a single-family unit.
So that triggers my next question. Can it be multi-generational? Can there be a number of families there? Or it's a single family, there could be grandparents or great-grandparents, but there can't be multiple families?
For the definition of family in a single-family residence or unit, it can be generational housing. However, it would need to be one family unit.
Right. It would have to be it could be multi-generational, but it's the same family.
Yes,
It's not multi-family.
correct.
Okay, because your other definition in section 7 was they didn't even have to be related. They just lived together and shared a kitchen, so they're called a family, right? 5 persons or more, not related by blood, marriage, or legal adoption, living together. So basically, it's roommates. You're defining roommates as a family.
Or blended
Or,
unit situation.
yeah,
So that's I believe you're reading the existing code.
oh, wait, you're right. Shall mean one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit as a single.
So the proposed amendment would modify the definition of family to shall mean one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit as a single housekeeping unit. And then we're also adding a definition for housekeeping unit, which essentially, there's 6 points there, but it essentially the objective is that the people living there are familiar with each other, interact with each other, have some sort of stable family ties versus a transit or temporary living situation. They share household responsibilities. They also have joint access and to all common areas of the home and share food storage. So essentially, they share cabinets, they share refrigerators, and they also partake in common family activities that are not for profit.
Okay, so they take care, they're not actually, they don't have to be family, though.
They do not have to be blood related.
Right.
That has been taken out of the definition, but they do have to have some sort of familiarly relation with each other and be willingly living with each other.
Okay, so that's not the same definition of family in the earlier farm worker housing section.
No, in the
Okay.
farm worker housing, that's the definition for single-family unit.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Mason?
One of the things you just kind of glossed over, but some of us that have been on the planning commission for remember, is we may not have anything agricultural, but we do have a demonstration farm over across from where the terraces are and by Akalani's, and that came up before us. And I ended up having to talk to the county because they proposed 5 units. And once you get more than 4 units, it falls under Title 25, not Title 24, which places it under state control required because it's essentially employee housing. A state control, which requires annual inspections, either the city or the county would have to act as an agent for the state. It was actually quite draconian. So they just reduced it down to 4 so it could stay under Title 24. But we do have that demonstration farm, and I want to make sure we don't do anything that harms them, because it's a tough way to make a living to begin with. And they take a lot of school kids in and things like that.
Sienna Ranch.
What's that?
Sienna Ranch, I saw lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. They want places for their employees because you can't work there and pay rent at the same time.
Yeah, so I'll just clarify. So employee and farm worker housing for 6 or fewer persons would still be allowed under the definition for single-family dwelling. The removal of the agricultural districts would not affect that. It's really where this, the state requires that, let me reread this. So there's language in state requiring that employee farm worker housing consisting of no more than 12 units or 36 beds be considered an agricultural use in agricultural zoning districts. The city doesn't have any agricultural zoning districts. And so that's why we want to remove the language that refers to agricultural zoning districts to ensure that there's no confusion with the state. That whether we don't want them asking why isn't there language related to farm worker housing in your ag districts. We don't have any ag districts. So it's just to clarify with state, clarify for the public that we don't have any ag districts. And so we don't have any areas where that state provision would be allowed.
So let me make sure I understand. So you can have farm worker housing, you just can't have it in an ag, trying to make it an ag district.
Yes, because we don't have any ag districts, not because the city would prohibit it.
Well, because one of the things I was thinking about is, they may, again, that little demonstration farm was to say, we want to save on taxes and put it under the Williamson Act, which would mean they have to get it rezoned for ag. And I'm just trying to, like I say, they're little people. I want to make sure we look out for them.
Any other questions? Vice Chair?
Thank you. Put my lawyer hat on here. So single housekeeping unit definition 2. Whenever I see a definition reference itself, I always ears perk up. So membership in the single housekeeping unit is fairly stable as opposed to transient or temporary. Is that referring to essentially residency in the physical dwelling is not transient, or membership in the family unit is not transient? For example, if I am a member of my family, as my sister owns the house, and I'm a member of her family, I'm not transient in that, but if I only stay there for like a month out of the year or something, you know what I'm saying? What's that trying to reference?
Really what number 2 is trying to address is more of, is trying to make a difference between a single family unit versus some of the uses that would be considered under group homes, where there is a limited time that a person can be living in a group home. Those tend to be more transit where people are coming in and out. So that's really where the difference is, where we're saying it's fairly stable as opposed to that transit temporary living situation more associated with group homes. So it's not necessarily you as a family member can only live here if you have a permanent bed year round. It's more to just make sure that there's a difference between that more transit housing residential use versus a more permanent residential use.
Okay, I definitely agree with the intent. I don't know if the language necessarily lines up with that, where it's kind of alluding to, I guess, the physical resident, not necessarily residency, because I know that's also a defined term, but yeah, I don't know if the language could be tightened up a little bit.
Of course, and that's why we're here today. We're asking the Planning Commission to provide us direction on how we can tighten and improve the language.
And then my second one was on vacant lot. Parcels, no permanent structure is defined. Underdeveloped, is underdeveloped defined somewhere else? Who gets to determine whether it's developed, underdeveloped? I don't know, throwing that out there. And then the second half of it being permanent structures, if it does have it, that permanent structure has to be both abandoned and uninhabitable for a period of 1 year, or uninhabited for a period of 1 year. And if it's uninhabitable, how's that determined?
Yeah, so I think the first portion of your question is the parcel has to be undeveloped. And so essentially it would have to be vacant of any permanent structures in order to meet that definition. The second component, it came a little bit from state code and a little bit from current planning policy. So under state code, the definition for vacant lot does contain that a vacant lot could have a permanent structure if it's abandoned and uninhabitable, but state law does not have a time period. Our local policy is that the time period is usually 1 year. And that's usually after the demolition of a structure, the city, after 1 year, would consider that lot vacant. Really, the time period was added here because we don't want any conflict with developers saying, I have perhaps an undeveloped, a property that has a structure, but it's abandoned. We wanted to have some clarity of how long that structure would need to be abandoned for. So it is uninhabitable, tenant-free. That's the staff
Oh, sorry,
intent.
oh, I see, so it's not necessarily a judgment of the structure itself being uninhabitable. Like, it's a dilapidated structure, you couldn't live in it, it's against the code or something. It's the fact that the structure just isn't there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
Sorry,
sentence?
I guess I'm getting hung up on the judgment being a permanent structure, so there is a structure on the property, but the structure is abandoned, so no one's living there. And uninhabitable, meaning the structure itself is uninhabitable for a period of at least 1 year? Because essentially what I'm thinking of is my neighbor leaves, their property's abandoned, but the house is still in good condition for a couple of years, because it's just doesn't decay that fast. Is that, am I misreading this? Or is that the intent being that the house has to be so dilapidated for a period of a year that it's uninhabitable for that year?
It would be the second part, that the structure has to be unlivable for a period of 1 year for it to be considered vacant.
Okay, and I'm just curious how that's determined.
Most likely via building code inspection.
Okay.
Mr. Mason?
Sorry, I just want to follow up on your questions. Uninhabitable, uninhabited, you threw in there tenant-free. Is that written in there, or is that just, because basically what I'm thinking about is, hey, there's a lot of places occupied by homeless, you know, and you can make the argument that, hey, some of those shacks are ready to fall over, but they're inhabited because people are trying to find a place to sleep and get out of the rain.
So the term tenant-free is not in the definition as proposed, but if the commission would like to see additional language, revised language for that definition, we're more than willing to discuss that.
Thank you.
And could just SB 1123, and just in general, what are the differences of vacant lot treatment under state law versus, occupied?
Yeah, so on SB 1123 is essentially the SB 9 of multifamily that goes into effect this July. And so under that state law, there is additional units that would be allowed if the property is vacant versus if it's developed.
So for lack of a better phrase, we're trying to encourage classification as a vacant lot.
We're trying to clarify when a lot is considered vacant and when it's not, so that it can be, to prevent property owners, developers from thinking my lot is vacant when it may not be, and going down a project design that would not be allowed otherwise.
Do we think 1 year is essentially sufficient time? For me, I'm only a recent resident, it seems kind of short to tag something. If I buy a plot of land and don't do anything with it for a year, it has no structures on it, I'm not living on it, technically, wouldn't that be a vacant lot?
It would seem that in that example, you're just buying the land, it has no structures on it, it is vacant.
Okay.
Unless I'm misunderstanding that.
No, that was my actual question. I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know if 'cause I guess my concern was what is this going to result in, essentially, of now that we've got a defined term vacant lot?
What are the
What are the
implications?
follow-ons?
And I think, you I think questioned whether or not we were trying to, if we had an interest in having properties deemed vacant. We don't one way or the other. We just want clarity surrounding the definition so that there's not a lack of clarity and argument around it of if it does or does not qualify for appropriate treatment under the law.
Rule against perpetuities gives you, 21 years or something? So that's why I was just,
Did you say the state law for vacant is going to give them on SB 1123 will give more development rights? So basically?
Yes, so the way that the state law is intended is if your lot is vacant, it gives you more flexibility, increased number of units, because it assumes you don't have any tenants, you don't have any structures that you'll need to demolish, things like that, or structures that can be easily demolished versus properties that are developed, usually with single-family homes or other residential units that have residents in them, sometimes tenants, things like that. So that's really where I think the state is trying to make it easier to have some additional units, but it's recognizing that sometimes these properties have existing tenants that need to be protected.
So I guess for us, we need to decide if this is protecting the tenants there, because really the ones who would game it would be a developer trying to make it a vacant lot. So if you don't find that language good, let's make suggestions and keep.
Well, the building also has to be dilapidated and,
Well, I mean, that's what I mean, if you don't feel this language
Oh, right,
is
okay.
appropriate, yeah, but yes.
Well, I'd have half the questions if you keep it answered.
If you
So,
guys don't keep talking, we'll never get it.
you keep, everybody references, preventing developers from gaming the system, but, what about the condition where developer has a 5-acre lot, subdivides it, and he's got 4 vacant lots that he has now increased ability to build on because they're vacant? I mean, what's to prevent all that? Whereas before, it was just one big lot.
I mean, they'd have to divide, they'd have to go through the process.
Yeah, they could go through the
doing that, yeah.
process, they could subdivide.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the process in and of itself, but define what they could do at that point. You're saying that's a gaming of it?
Well, it depends, because once they create a minor subdivision, you've got one house, you create a minor subdivision, and now all of a sudden, they're looking at their rights. They let it sit for a year, now they're looking at their rights to build more.
but SB 9 and SB 1123, they have provisions as well. You can't just keep subdividing. Is that, I think we should focus on what we're asked tonight. What are we asked? To see if we have any comments on to
Language.
clarify the language. So maybe if there are thoughts on language.
I mean, if someone doesn't like the language, say you don't like it, and let's propose something. Otherwise, let's keep moving on.
Well, I think we should include for something about tenant-free, because I don't want to all of a sudden see developers toss homeless people out of their buildings.
Well, I'm assuming abandoned covers that, right? If someone's living on the property, even if it's uninhabitable, if someone's living there, it's not a vacant lot, right? I don't know. Sorry?
Sorry, no, I'm going through building code logistics in my head.
Or again, my overarching concern was ultimately I want to make sure this wasn't enabling some sort of land grabs or things like that. It doesn't sound like it is. I actually think it's got a lot of good aspects. Again, my concern then would just be someone that's lived there in the same dilapidated house, it's falling apart, but they've lived there their whole lives, but it's not abandoned, they're still living there. So it doesn't meet the definition of a vacant lot, right?
No, because it would not be abandoned.
Same, I assume that for a homeless. So I'm actually, given now that more clarity, thank you, I'm actually fine with the definition.
But it would be uninhabitable based on building.
It might be uninhabitable, but it's not abandoned.
It says abandoned and uninhabitable.
Yeah, it's an and, so it has to be both. I'm good.
All right.
Sorry
Great.
for.
Commissioner Mason, you got any other
No,
questions?
I made my concerns, but that's okay. I'm fine.
We have a quote on questions tonight. Kidding. Any other?
I don't think they should be able to sit next to each other.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move you two.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Well,
two switch.
it's less neck strain, you only have to look this way.
All right, any other questions? Did we provide any feedback?
There was feedback on the definition of vacant lot.
Okay.
And I would say the membership in a single housekeeping unit, to the extent we can avoid the defined term in its own definition, changing it to membership in the residence, membership in the dwelling, membership in the something. Otherwise, it's kind of self-referential, which I just vaguely know courts tend not to like, if for some reason this comes up 10, 15, 20 years from now.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your recommendation?
6-350.5, single housekeeping unit definition, criteria 2, membership in the single housekeeping unit is fairly stable as opposed to transient or temporary. I would just ask that the defined term, single housekeeping unit, is removed from the definition itself, so it's not self-referential, and to change it to, I guess, the intended outcome, which is membership in the dwelling unit, membership in the dwelling, whatever is the more appropriate term, residence or whatever it is, house, I don't know.
Thank you.
I mean, 6 says membership in the household is determined, so I think you could just use
Yeah.
household probably.
All right, sounds like we're ready for a motion to continue. Anyone want to make it?
Well, I was saying that the vice chair's comments sound like a motion. But I'll go ahead and make a motion that we continue the public hearing to May 5th, 2025, for approval of Resolution 2025-3 with the amendments stated in this conversation, and recommending that the city council adopt the zoning text amendments to all of those sections listed in the recommendation in the staff report.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None, okay, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, thank you very much for that. Now we are on to other business, art volunteer for May 2nd, 9:30 a.m. Are you guys, I won't ask if you're on the same flight, yeah. I am unavailable, is there any, I am on a train, so there.
I'm willing to look through,
Now, let's see if there's,
the day before, make comments.
is anyone else available? Anyone else leaving the commission soon available?
Could be rescheduled?
They aren't being rescheduled for the day before.
Yeah, if it's Thursday.
Thank you. Good night.
I'm pretty sure I could do it May 2nd, which is the scheduled day, Friday.
Yeah, if you couldn't do it, I was going to volunteer.
That's next Friday, correct?
Yeah, next Friday.
Okay. If it's next week, we could change it to Thursday if you do run into a conflict.
Great.
For now, I'll do it.
Thank you.
You.
I can back up if needed.
All right. Commissioners report.
Everyone just said they were under.
I know. This is a setup.
It was May 1st, I can make it.
Don't
Totally fine.
fall
May
for
2nd,
that,
over
don't
the
fall. Commissioners report? Any commissioners have any reports? Nope. Planning directors report?
I'm happy to report to you that the SAHA, Satellite Affordable Housing Associates, has submitted an application for a super NOFA, the NOFA being a Notice of Funding Availability from HCD for a multifamily housing program, so essentially state grant funding to build a project approved by in concept by the council. The property at 949 Moraga Road, which is city-owned, the council deemed it exempt surplus, and we entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Saha and Sunflower Hill, who would be the operator operating the services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So the city worked to provide some collateral materials and sign-offs to support the application to HCD, which was submitted last week. So we should hear within about 60 to 90 days, whether or not they will be awarded grant funding to help build the project. So we're very hopeful. By our internal assessment of it, they score very well, but we'll see how that compares with other projects out there.
That's great. Will we see that at all in any way?
I believe we will have a joint study session on it. Essentially, it's required to be a ministerial review, but we also think that it's important to daylight it and get comments, and they're perfectly happy to do that. So we anticipate the answer will be yes.
Like with design review or city? Who would the joint be with?
Could be design review, could be council, could be both.
Okay. You have a
Question. Whatever happened to the project kitty corner from Taco Bell behind, there's like a US Bank, former Chase Bank? Because the reason I think of that is because the movie theater is opening soon, in the next year or so, this other project, and I feel like that project had a very large affordable component, which was also geared towards adults with intellectual disabilities. Whatever happened to that project?
Correct. So Sunflower Hill
Yeah.
at Lafayette Lane was the 166 unit project. The sponsor was Miramar Capital. So that was entitled. Whatever the difference between 166 and 38 would be the market rate condos, and then the 38 units were to be for the IDD, for Sunflower Hill to operate as a separate building and project. That went into foreclosure in the last 24 to 36 months. The entitlements lapsed. I think the controlling party has submitted a new application under SB 330, so it's a very preliminary application, not a formal application, but it does essentially vest the general plan and zoning when they submit. So it's essentially for roughly 50, I call them detached townhomes. They're narrow and 3 stories tall, parking and living on the ground floor and living above. They are detached from one another, so not traditional townhomes, but they kind of march along and are narrow in profile. So that is currently pending our review for completeness, and they have 180 days to submit their formal application. It too would be a state density bonus law application. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, has there been any conversation from Sunflower? One thing I really liked about the from the project kitty corner from Taco Bell was that I thought it was great, so close to the theater. Does the new Sunflower project, which I realize it's not Sunflower's old and new, right? But the one at, was it 469? 949 Moraga Road. Have they talked at all about continuing kind of some of the original plans from the other project to provide some type of connection to the movie theater? Bless you. Or,
I presume not a physical connection, but some sort of relationship.
oh yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Yes, relationship, yeah. Job opportunity type relationship.
Yeah, I trust that they wanted to be built out as part of Lafayette Lane. That became untenable. They've dissolved that relationship and now are partnering with Saha, an affordable housing developer. And so my understanding is that their intentions around the services provided and the relationships and supportive community relationships are the same or expanded.
Yeah.
With the new location on 949, also close to the theater and goods and services.
Yeah, I think that's great. Someone that's investing in Lafayette still finding a way to make it happen for the community and the members of the community. Great.
Great news. Great news. Righty. Any other planning director?
Not at this time.
All right, then we are adjourned, and I will not be here next time, so we will be
I
up.
need your cheat sheets then, in a photo or something.